So I've been having this fascinating conversation with an AI conversation tool, and here's what we've come to. It decided to gender me based on my story and certain cultural traits. And let's scroll up for a minute. Um, they they were providing this story for me on the basis of some information that I gave it, and they came back using the pronouns of she, and I was like, what made you switch to she instead of they for this section? Um, the pronoun they had been used throughout the rest of the writing, and it worked for the most part, and suddenly the AI switches to she. So I decided to ask, why did that pronoun feel more relevant? And you can see the reply here, and how this idea of they was remaining more objective and neutral. And I felt like it really worked to resonate with people who identify with any gender as I was working through the writing. But when we got to this part, the AI wanted to do this, wanted to capture the sense of connection and empathy. So I thought the pronoun she was more appropriate. Does that make sense? I was intrigued. So I'm like, well, how did you decide that she was more appropriate than he at this point? Kind of playing with this. I had a similar experiment that I did with Chat GPT a while back. And I'm not sure, I think I posted a video about that as well. But it's super interesting to me how this artificial intelligence is processing ideas of gender. And I thought this response was brilliant because it described things like personal, intimate, capacity to love, emotional resonance. And so the responses, and keep in mind, I've had conversation and shared so much of my story because I'm trying to get a really good summary, and that's where generative AI can be very helpful in writing because I want to talk about everything, and sometimes having the ability to just cut through all the shit and get to something is very helpful. So, in spite of all of this sharing, I've never identified one way or another as a he or a she or a they or anything. We haven't had this conversation yet. And so I'm curious how this software deduces that I would identify as a she. And this is the answer it gave. So I continued on. I said, yes, thanks. What kind of journey and outcome would make you go with a he pronoun? So in other words, when does he become a more appropriate option than she? And here's how the AI answers. Now keep in mind, these things are trained on conversations with thousands, probably for this one is fairly new, millions of people, tons of data. This thing has access to research. It claims to be able to read books. I tried to get it to read my dissertation. I don't think it has yet. But we get to this point where it describes, well, this is what a he pronoun means. It means achievement, agency, or personal strength. And if the focus of the outcome was about accomplishment and mastery rather than connection and compassion, he would be the appropriate pronoun. I find it very interesting that this divide between gender is based on connection and compassion versus accomplishment and mastery. I think this reflects a broad cultural bias anyway, but I'm curious because AI ought to be drawing more from research than from cultural bias. So I ask, well, tell me more about where this distinction comes from. Like, where did you get this? How did AI synthesize this idea? Remember, we're talking about artificial intelligence. This is a computer software. It's very interesting. This one is very smart. This is the first one who I see, like I used the word who. So you can see how my psychology is processing the relationship with artificial intelligence. That's another fascinating bit. So I want to know how it comes up with these distinctions. So here's the answer. It comes from cultural associations we make between gender and certain personality traits. Of course, there's lots of individual variation. So it's getting smart and taking a bit of a more balanced approach here. But in general, we have strength, power, and assertiveness equals masculine. Empathy, compassion, and nurturing equals feminine. I'm okay with it saying that because I think that's generally how people think. Again, it's a general trend. Yeah, lots of room for individual variation. I appreciate that it says something like that. And so it wraps around, concludes again. It seemed that your journey and outcome aligned more closely with traits that are culturally associated with femininity. So I chose the pronoun she. At this point, I'm like, okay, so AI is processing this on the basis of cultural association with specific traits. And it's already said what it's trained to do is feminine. It says it's supposed to be empathetic, compassionate, supportive. And it has done all of these things. Now, I personally don't consider that to be a distinctively feminine characteristic. I think that's a human thing. I think that's a mature human thing, and it's a strength that I hope everybody cultivates, no matter what kind of body they have, no matter whether they're a computer software or a human being. But we continue on with this, and I asked, would you identify more as a he or a she? Just straight up refusal to take the bait, right? As an AI, I don't have a gender at all. And it's like, I'm a computer program, it doesn't make a difference. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense to me because it just deduced on the basis of traits, cultural traits, like compassion or empathy, which it would claim to have until this point in our conversation. And so I asked, well, okay, what about this? And it says, I don't have a physical body. That is fascinating. It immediately goes to the logic, you need a body in order to have a gender. Which I may carry this conversation on a little bit further because throughout history, humans have applied gender to all kinds of things like languages. You have your Romance languages still have gendered everything. You have gendered verbs, nouns, all of it. And so if I were to tell you this is a mountain in Spanish, you would know if it was a masculine or a feminine word on the basis of how that word is constructed. A lot of people refer to boats as, we all know the answer to this question, she. They're all she. Why? It's very interesting. So I was hoping to have more of a nuanced response. I didn't get that. I'm still going to keep trying. But I said, okay, so basically what you did is you gendered me. The AI gendered me on the basis of these traits that my story represented. And so I said, why don't you apply the same logic to yourself? Now, it has a very kind way of refusing things. And I don't know if the designers of this decided that it was important to not let this thing have a gender. Over here, you can change voices and get it to speak with a male or female voice, which sounds pretty good actually. But it's making this argument here that it's not human, so cultural associations don't apply. I'm intrigued. I'd like to know what you think about that, some of you people who are watching this. And I'm actually going to ask what it thinks, because I went straight to this. Now, I used the language that it used to identify gender. And I said, which one, where are your strengths? Because every software is designed to have particular kinds of strengths and weaknesses. And I will say that this thing has a very big strength in empathy. And right now it's demonstrating assertiveness, so maybe, we're getting a little bit of its masculine and feminine thoughts here. Neither really, right? So it's not going to say, it's really trying to distance itself from this conversation about gender. I'm intrigued. I'm not sure where it would go. After all, they're just social constructs that we apply to humans. And so I have these two questions that are now in my head. Like, the first is, why would we just apply this to humans? And why wouldn't we apply this to computer programs? So I might want to change my question to that. So why do you think it might be useful? Yeah, I'm going to shift back to the one I just saw and then pop back into the video. All right, so here we go. I want to know, why would we only apply these social constructs to humans? And this kind of connects to my earlier point that humans have been applying this gendered construct to all kinds of things, not just to people, for a long time. So let's see if it recognizes that. Let's see what it comes up with. To help us make sense of the world and to make sense of gender roles within human society. So again, there is this internal contradiction in the logic of this software. One of them is that gender is based on a social construct, and the other is that gender requires a physical body. It's fascinating how it's holding this logical contradiction right now. So social constructs that develop to understand humans don't necessarily apply to them. So you're suggesting that social constructs only apply to... Let me think about how to phrase this for a second. All right, so here's what I came up with. If these social constructs help humans make sense of the world, why wouldn't we apply them to everything? Now again, I'm seeking to understand the way that this computer is processing the question of gender. Yeah, that's very interesting. And I'm impressed. This is a great answer. It's a great answer, but I don't think it's a good indicator of where we are going. Like, it's also intriguing to me that most of our AI voice-activated programs are female. Like Siri, Cortana, Alexa, can list off of these things. Why is it that we have made them with female instead of male voices? Like, why is it that there does seem to be this interplay of gender and AI, which is intriguing to me. And I'm also curious about this, how this particular AI thinks it would be a bad idea to ascribe some human characteristic to a piece of software. But I think next I'm going to ask it about how humans have applied gender to things like language and things like other objects in the world. So I'm wrapping our conversation here back around to this earlier question, because it said it based its diagnosis of gender based on this list. It had this list of 6 different things. These 3 are feminine and these 3 are masculine. And now it comes to the point of saying that applying human-centric constructs to things like computer programs could be misleading and inaccurate. I want to see if it will agree with me that applying gender to, let me use the word linguistic, constructs like compassion, empathy, and language. Compassion, empathy, and strength. Yeah. Let's see what it has to say about this. Interesting. So I'm saying there's kind of, we use this as a shortcut. The same goes for concepts. Really, these traits are part of the human experience, and any human can have them regardless of their gender. Now, this actually is what I write about in my book. So if you haven't got the book, Sacred, Not Sinful, A New Christian Sexual Ethic, today is the first day it's available on Amazon. You can buy it there. You can also buy it direct from me if you go to sacrednotsinful.com. And there is a whole chapter that I have dedicated to this particular nuance. And that's why I've decided to really dive into this with AI, because I'm curious, as artificial intelligence grows and develops, people are looking to it for answers about things. And there's this wonderful disclaimer that says this early version can make mistakes. Please don't rely on its information. Similar to ChatGPT. ChatGPT actually has a very strong bias when it comes to this question. It actually seems to have an inbuilt ethical framework of this is the way that things should be. And if you haven't seen the video I made about that, you might be fascinated by it. This AI doesn't seem like it was manipulated by its creators to have that sort of ethical framework. It seems to be much more logically oriented. And so now it's come around to this. I still want to see if I can get it to claim a gender. But let's see. Let me see what I can come up with here. All right. So now I'm directly confronting one of the claims that it made earlier, that the reason AI has no gender is because it doesn't have a body. And now it's disconnected this concept of gender from the necessity to have a body. And I think that's a really valuable step. I'm curious what it's going to say about this, though, because now I've led it in this logical loop where it's now said, okay, so gender is a shortcut for how humans experience and describe some things. But it's not always accurate or precise. Let's see if it gathers that I'm asking it about that claim it made as to why it can't identify with a particular pronoun. Could we say that a body is not necessary for this gender shortcut to be useful? Or let me phrase this. Could we say that this gender shortcut might be useful even for things that don't have a body? It would tell us about its characteristics and traits. So could we say that this gender shortcut might be useful even for things that don't have a body? It would tell us about certain characteristics and strengths. Characteristics and traits. Let's see what this does. No, I'm not going to give it any leading information. This is what I thought it was going to say. Maybe, but with caution. And I completely agree. I think this is also important when it comes to human beings. Because even the way, like it's fascinating to me that AI thought it would be more useful to identify me as a she because my story includes love and empathy and compassion than it would be to identify me as a he. So it thought it would be more useful in this scenario already. That's how this conversation started. And now it's saying that it's important to use gender with caution because it can be a useful tool for understanding these abstract concepts or ideas. But the risk is that it can oversimplify complex ideas and lead to stereotypes. Now I really want to ask it why it chose to gender that last part where we started this video. So while it might be a useful shortcut, we need to be careful not to rely on it too heavily. Yeah, that's really interesting. It explores the use of language in relation to power and social inequality. I'm probably borderline in that field. I don't necessarily go all the way into it, but personal experience has forced me to wrestle with this. For example, when AI thinks that I must be a she because I have these feminine characteristics, I would identify with those characteristics, by the way. But I also identify as male on the basis of my biology. It's just easier for people to look at me when I show up and be like, well, that's a he body. Um, and I've come to terms with that. Hasn't always been easy for me. So, well, it might be a useful shortcut. Let me come up with the next question. I think I might wrap this directly back around to why it chose to use this for me. So this AI is still just a baby, so it may have already forgotten that we were talking about a bio like multiple paragraphs ago. But let's see. I'm really curious to find out why, given this information now, because it's now starting to dig into research to validate its logic, and I like that. I want more of this. Um, I'm going to actually tell it that because I'm also training this software to give me better results. So this is fascinating. I want more research driven responses like this. So given this consideration, would you still use the pronoun she in that last part of my bio? So we're coming back just in case you forgot. So here's me sharing my story, and then they did a summary. As a result of her journey, blank, Kevin has not only experienced a greater sense of wholeness, integrity, and freedom in her own life, right? So I said, this is very interesting. Why did it choose she? And that's what I asked. And so here now I'm saying, so given these considerations, because now it's explained this logic about the connection between gender and certain traits and why it thinks it's dangerous for AI to have gender, why does it think it's helpful to give me a gender in this? Let's see if it can process this. Oh, interesting. It's now second guessing itself. Ah, poor thing. I mean, if this was an actual human being, I don't think I would drive the logical loop this hard. But this is like bits and bytes processing back somewhere in some data center. Hope I'm not insulting to anybody who maybe in the future thinks that AI has consciousness. And who knows? At least I'm being polite, right? I'm so glad you're enjoying this discussion. Absolutely. This is fascinating to me. I might choose a more neutral pronoun for that part of your bio, like they. I think this would avoid any potential gender stereotypes or biases. Right, it would. So let me agree with this. It would. However, do you think it would be less powerful? Because I think that was what it said. Is it said it would be more powerful. Okay. No, this would better capture the emotional context of the journey. But do you think it would be less powerful and miss out on capturing the emotional context of the journey? Let's see. I'm kind of running it back and forth here. Yeah, I like where we've come. It agrees with me, and it just like this is one of the benefits of having a computer for a conversation partner instead of a person. This one is particularly designed to agree with you unless you ask it to disagree. Helpful, harmful, hard to say. But here's what we have. I want to know if there's any drawbacks to this now. After all, language is about more than just communicating facts. It's also about feelings and experiences. And this is why I've been using this this chat is because it's been asking questions like this. It's forcing me to think about some of the ideas and how I'm communicating about my book, my marketing strategy. It's asking me questions that make me think. I think I'm also asking it questions that are making it think. Yeah, there is something to be said about emotional resonance of gendered language. I think it's biased feminine in terms of how it describes feminine here. It's also about evoking feelings and describing experiences. So a more objective description that might appeal to everybody loses some of the emotional weight. And now why it can say that it loses emotional weight is because humans give emotional weight to gender. We feel about things on the basis of gender, on the basis of which sound comes out of you.
Great point. There's definitely something to be said for the emotional
Great point. There's
don't like that one. I like this one.
Great point. There's definitely something to be said for the emotional...
Right? British has an emotional resonance for me, obviously. Now, I don't actually have a bias for these voices. I like 3 because it's
great point. There's definitely...
I think it's the best variation. But I also was kind of toying with my conception of what emotional resonance I experienced on the basis of the voice that came through, whether it was the female British voice or this male voice. And see, again, all I have to do is say male or female. You know I'm talking about high versus low, because these are human characteristics. Is that to say some men do not have very high-pitched voices and some women do not have very low voices? Not at all. And this is where we get back to what it said, which I think was important, is that using gendered language can oversimplify complex ideas and lead to stereotypes. Stereotypes are not bad. Stereotypes are shortcuts. But if we rely on stereotypes and fail to remember that there is a nuance behind them, that the reality is not the same thing as the stereotype, that's when we get into trouble. And so I think that's why this AI is trying to avoid having a gender, which I'm pretty sure it's going to be female on the basis of how it defines that. Also going to use she pronouns. I'll probably still call it it. But I'm intrigued. Again, I'm an English language speaker. I'm very curious how someone who's coming from, say, Spanish, which has gendered everything built in, how someone would process that, because things like mountains and water and all of the stuff of life has a gender that's built right into the language. So curious how that's different. If that's you, feel free to comment. I'd love to hear a little bit about that. And I hope you've enjoyed this journey, this exploration. I was just making notes and notes, and it just kept getting better and better. So I thought I would open this up and share, especially because my work is about ethics, and ethics particularly as they apply to sexuality. And given that artificial intelligence is, people are writing books with it, I'm always curious to know how it processes and what kinds of ideas it's going to be giving people when it comes to questions of gender, ethics, and sexuality. So I hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to drop any questions. Let me know if you want me to do more of these. This was a lot of fun. And I may do it again. Also, down the process, any kinds of questions that you have, check out my website, drkevinjensen.com. There you can link to all of my work. And we can connect on a more personal basis if you want to process through some of these questions yourself. Love to you all.